All right, welcome,
Right.
welcome. Let's get started. As always, please make sure that you share your questions. At the very end, we'll make sure we answer them to the absolute best of our ability. And if this is your first time joining us, meet Ashley. Hey, Ashley.
Hey, everybody.
Ash,
Go ahead, Parker. What?
no, I was saying Ashley. So I know that this is like a pretty long business card here. Realtor, Dreammaker, VPR Luxury Properties. For folks who this is their first one, break down for us why you put all three of those bullet points.
Yeah, well, one reason is this is a real estate podcast, webinar. So you guys know we are talking about real estate, and I'm probably a realtor. So that's kind of obvious. But there's more to what I do than just sell real estate. And I think that's why I like to include Dreammaker there, because I believe that what I'm doing is helping you and your family really meet your dreams. And it's a period of time that happens over decades sometimes, as you grow your family, as life changes. And so that's really important for me to include there. And then I'm really proud to be a part of VPR, which is my brokerage firm, but they've got a separate division for luxury properties and living on the Lake Lanier in Atlanta, and kind of focusing in this area. I have had more of my focus of real estate in the luxury market. So that's why I include that as well.
And you do a phenomenal job with it. And if you want to continue to read Ashley's amazing CV, all of her accomplishments, they're right here. Wanted to briefly introduce myself. I'm Parker Couch. I'm happy to co-sponsor this amazing monthly webinar. Former teacher, principal, grew up in the business, and just two promises: loans always close on time, and that I'll proactively over communicate. But let's get to the good stuff. Today, Ashley is going to be, and I'll jump in as well, but really I feel like I'm going to learn just as much as the folks watching this. Let's talk about tips and hacks for selling and buying at the same time. All right, Ashley, let's go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, and I think, one of the reasons we wanted to have this webinar is some of our clients are buying a starter home, so they don't have another home to sell. Some people are kind of like I was during COVID, I sold my home, then I lived in a rental property for a while, and then I didn't have another house to sell when I bought, right? But most of our clients, if they are buying a new home, they're also selling in a home that they're currently in. So we really wanted to focus on this because there's a lot of things to consider and plan out in advance if you are doing both, so that the timing really works for you and what you need in your life right now. So that's why we're doing this webinar today.
Awesome.
And we might have a few confusing words, but we're going to try really hard to talk about your current primary home and your new home, your future home. We'll try to call that out so it's not as confusing when we're talking about these two homes: one that you're selling, your current home, but you're buying your new or future home.
And this is really incredibly important, because back a year ago during COVID, you could more confidently take the risk of going under contract for your future primary residence, knowing that the second you put your current primary residence in the market, it would probably sell and get offers instantly. We're still in a seller's market. It's still a great time to list and sell, but it's definitely not where we were a year ago. And where we were a year ago is not something we should expect to see again. It was a once in a generation thing. And so what that means is that buying before selling is still absolutely a viable strategy, but it comes with it a little bit more risk than we would have seen a year ago. So that's why also covering this topic right now is even more important than it was a year ago. Okay, so let's jump in. Tips for buying and selling at the same time. Tip number one, Ashley.
All right. So, and again, selling and buying at the same time, there's usually like this tight window of time that you kind of need to work within. And so that's why we wanted to put these tips together. So the most obvious, is finding an experienced real estate agent who can help you really understand what are the challenges and what are the benefits of buying and selling in your market. So every market, just like we talked about in last month's webinar, is different. And so you can't just rely on what you're hearing on TV in the national news or what you see on HGTV. Every market is different. So make sure you have an agent who really knows the market and can tell you about the trends that are happening in your market.
So what I'm kind of hearing, Ashley, is having a real estate professional who you trust, really one of the most important things that he or she could do for you is just kind of set realistic expectations. Not just realistic expectations on when you would be able to list and sell your current primary residence, but that right there is going to dictate maybe how long and how aggressive of a close you can offer on your future primary residence. So
Yes.
that's I'm glad that you brought that up. It is so important that this is the first step. Really needs to be your first step no matter what, but it absolutely needs to be your first step before making the decision to buy and sell at the same time. All right, tip number 2.
Tip number 2, I'm gonna let you chat about this slide, Parker, but I talk to my clients all the time. Okay, they're gonna work with me. I want you to help me sell my house. I want you to help me buy a new house. But what I need you to do next is to have some type of financial counseling to know what works best for you and your situation, money-wise and time-wise. So Parker, talk a little bit about why it's so important to have a trusted mortgage lender partner on your side as well. And on our team.
Absolutely. So really, there are a lot of different nuances when it comes to selling your current primary residence so that you can then buy your future primary residence. And the fact of the matter is, most Americans, and there's a study that shows that 85% of 85% of like the wealth held in America, it's in the equity of real estate and property. And so for a lot of folks, they're going to have to sell their current primary residence in order to make enough money so they can then do a down payment. That being said, there are absolutely some borrowers, and you may be one of them, to where you've not only currently own a home, your current primary residence, but you've got, let's say, a good amount of money saved up for a down payment. So here are like the 3 different questions and or steps I would want everyone to consider when trying to decide whether or not they are going to be able to buy before they sell. So one is, do you have enough cash for a down payment? And that's, do you have enough cash before the sale of your current home? Next is, how much cash will you have left over after you've made that down payment and bought your future primary residence? That's important because there might be a period of time where you're having to pay 2 different mortgages. So do you have enough cash left over to cover that? And then last but not least, do you have enough cash to pay, like I was just saying, 2 mortgages? A good rule of thumb is for up to 3 months. If you have someone like Ashley as your realtor and she is listing your current primary residence, she'll probably get it sold faster than 3 months. But that's a really good kind of conservative target to aim towards.
Yeah. And thank you, Parker. That's really nice. But sometimes it does take closer to 3 months, but it's because when I work with sellers, I really try to price aggressively, but competitively at the top end of the market. So if we want that price, then a lot of times it does take a little bit longer to sell, but we almost always get what we're looking for. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, tip number 3. And I know you're the timeline
So,
queen, Ashley. So talk us through this.
I've become better and better as I've been in real estate. Well, first, you've got to have that team. So now you've got a great real estate advisor, a great guide beside you. You've got your lender partner. So that's your team that's going to help you move forward. So now with your team together, let's make a plan. And the plan's around your timeline. So, okay, how long, if I'm selling my house right now, or I'm thinking about selling my house in a month, at what point during that process do we need to start looking for a new home? How long do we think that's going to take? Do we think we'll be able to close in a reasonable amount of time? Okay. Do I need time to move into my new home? Or do I need time to move out of my current home? So there's these like time gaps that we have to think about what's really going to work for you in your situation, the amount of stuff that you have, and just what are you going to do with it if you can't move into your new home right away?
Yeah, that's well said. And these are the questions you need to get answers to before you make an offer on your future primary residence. Absolutely. All right, tip number 4, getting your house ready to sell. I know this is something, Ashley, that you spend a lot of your expertise and time thinking through and advising through. So talk us through, what do you mean get your house ready to sell? What could that possibly entail?
There's so many things, kind of like what you see on the slide right here to be thinking about. not everybody gets a home inspection before they list their house, but sometimes if you think, oh, what surprises might a buyer who puts a contract on my house come up to us with and say, hey, we're going to want this repaired. If you even have a doubt in your mind that that might happen, I do recommend getting a home inspection up front so that you can make those repairs ahead of time, or be ready to provide concessions or even lower our price so that a buyer knows, this isn't a surprise. It's something that they're going to have to do. I really think, and we've talked about this in other webinars, so I won't dwell on it too much, but staging your home, whether that means decluttering or whether that means literally like getting new furniture, is really important to set your house apart from others. This is the key. Most likely your home is one of 20 or 30 that other people could choose from that's in the same price range, the same area. And so what are you doing to set your home apart that makes people want to buy it and not others? Staging does a great job with that. And then the key, though, is determining the best price for your home. And this is another reason why it's so important to work with a realtor that really knows the area, that understands the market, and knows, what people are buying for, what they're willing to give on in that specific area. And you can really price your house the right way.
Awesome. Well said. All right. That was tip 4. So now let's talk about selling your home and moving into a new one. Doesn't have to be tricky. So tip number 5, let's buy that new home.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be tricky. And I actually, Parker, from when we practiced earlier this week, I moved that slide, but I put it in between our tips because I think that these next few tips are focused on buying and selling and like planning for that gap.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be tricky, but you do need to have that plan in place. It's very,
absolutely.
So buy your new home. Okay, so most people are going to be buying a new home while their current home that they live in is on the market to be sold. Most. So if you already have a plan and somewhere to stay, then you don't really need to be stressed. You don't need to be anxious. Like, when is my house going to sell? I don't have another place to go to because I haven't found my new home yet, right? But not everybody has a place to stay. So that's why it's really important to also just have that plan in place when you're so to buying a new home, almost if you can. And we'll talk about ways that you'll be able to afford having that new home if you buy it before you sell, might be best for you if you don't have a place to go temporarily.
Yep, that's and one thing that I want to reiterate that you said is, getting that home inspection on the front end was really important if you're thinking about selling. But then I would maybe this is not a surprise to you, but whenever you're ordering a home inspection, you have like your basic home inspection, but there are some add-on services that inspection companies offer. For example, if you have a lot of trees in your front and backyard and it's an older property, then most inspection companies will offer essentially like a video scoping of the pipes to make sure that none of the pipes have been burst by tree roots. There are also different inspection companies that will offer partnerships with different foundation companies. So if you really want like a super thorough foundation. So I say all this because this is such a huge financial investment. And so don't try to cut corners on the front end, because if you cut corners on the front end, especially with the upfront inspection, it could really kind of bite you in the butt later down the road.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about selling your home. This is obviously an exciting day when this happens.
So exciting. So remember, you've done all this work up front to get ready to list it. You know what the right price is, it looks beautiful. And so then your agent is going to list it. They're also going to market it to the right buyers. So, a lot of agents will just put their listings on the MLS. So it shows up on Zillow or it shows up on realtor.com. That works. That's probably how you bought your last house. But if you want your home to really be showcased to the people who might actually buy your home, then sometimes you want to make sure your realtor is going a little bit over and above to really market it to specific agents who have clients that are looking for homes that are like yours. Maybe even if they have more of a national network of agents that they work with. But just make sure it's marketed to the right buyers. That's going to allow you to get more offers and more aggressive and competitive offers aligned to your price point. And don't forget, plan on at least 90 days to sell it. You might get really lucky and go under contract in 1 day and you'll close in 2 to 4 weeks. But most of the time, it's going to take about 90 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then once you sell your home, you'll be able to move your items into your new home. If you have a new home already that you have bought, or you'll have time to do renovations and updates on your new home if you have temporary housing. So on the next slide, tip number 7, that's where we're going to talk about, and Parker, you can help me out here too.
Yeah.
The gap between selling and buying. So this is specifically, okay, I haven't bought or closed on my new home yet, but I have sold my current home, or I'm about to sell my current home. So what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
What are so there's some things to think about, and we'll talk about this.
Yeah. So I think one thing to think through is, okay, if we're buying our future primary residence before we're selling our current primary residence, and let's just say that we've got the cash, right? We've got the cash to the down payment on the future primary residence, but let's just say that that cash is kind of locked up in retirement accounts and you don't want to pay that tax penalty. Well, one strategy that you can kind of bridge that gap is, since you're still living in, your current primary residence, which I would hope would have a lot of equity in it, then you can do something called a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, where you can actually take out in cash a certain amount of equity in your current primary residence. You can use that cash for your down payment on your future primary residence. And then once you do eventually sell your current primary residence, well, anything that you took out of that equity will be paid back with the net sale proceeds. So it's called a HELOC, H-E-L-O-C. That's just one of many strategies that you can do to try to bridge that gap between buying your future home and then waiting to sell your current home.
Yep. And so some other things to consider would be, okay, if I have sold my home and I haven't bought or haven't closed on my new home, maybe you need to figure out where you're going to live until you buy your new home. So you could find temporary housing with a family member. Some people like that, some people don't. You might be able to find an affordable rental house. If you ask your friends, some of them might have a friend, or they might themselves rent property and give you either like a discount or allow you to only rent for a short period of time without a penalty. I have a client right now who actually, they just sold their house and they're building a new house on the lake. And in the meantime, they are renting a small home apartment in downtown Roswell, and they're just having the best time because they can.
Oh, that's awesome.
All these great restaurants, and like it's a fun way for them to, in this in-between period, to live in a part of town that they're not used to, but really experience and enjoy. So you could do that. But also you need to think about where you're going to keep your stuff, right? Like you have furniture, you have clothes, kitchen appliances and dishes. Where are you going to keep that if somebody else is living in your house? So thinking about where you're going to store that too. And then, as Parker was talking about, if you can't get something like a HELOC, how are you going to pay 2 mortgage payments? So
that's right.
Have that plan in place.
Y'all get to say, hey, can you say hello, Marley?
Hello.
Hey, baby, Daddy's almost done with his meeting, okay? I love you. I'll be right there. This sweet girl. So I know, you can get some water. She's getting some water, everybody. Got to stay hydrated. Very important. And then we talked a little bit about a HELOC, but then there's some other things that you can do to bridge that gap. One is a rent back agreement. The next is a contract contingency. And the last is a bridge loan. Ashley, do you want to talk about rent back agreement and the contract contingency?
Yeah, sure. So rent back agreements have been kind of popular, as both of these have been kind of popular, especially during COVID. But I think we're still in a type of market where many sellers would allow you to do this if they're not in a tight space of where they need to move into your home. So a rent back agreement is you close on the home on the 15th, but you aren't closing on you close on your current home the one you currently live in, someone has bought it on the 15th, but you aren't going to close on your new home until maybe the 30th of the following month.
So we've got a
So
15-day gap there.
yes, yes. And so you'd ask the owner during your contract negotiation period before you guys close on the home that you owned first. You ask that new owner if they would be willing to let you stay for that 14 days or that 3 months or however long you're going to need. And usually they'll allow you to rent back, and often people will do it for no money if the price was right on the sale of the home, or a small rental amount, or a fair monthly rental amount. But they're saying, you know, we have bought the house, but we're allowing you to stay here for this short period of time. So that's the rent back agreement. The contract contingency, a lot of people do. I actually was just talking to an agent on the phone about a house that she has listed that I'm hoping one of my clients will like. And they've gotten some offers that are good offers, but the buyers are asking the owners, hey, I want to buy your house, but I'm making it contingent upon, meaning like dependent upon the sale of my home. And so they're kind of holding out to see if they get some kind of other offer where somebody doesn't have a contract contingency like that. But it's not too risky. The main thing that's risky for the seller is, or that would be you if you're selling your home, is that what if the buyer doesn't sell their home in a shorter period of time, and now your house is off the market for all that time? So what I recommend is, if someone does offer you a contingency like that, that they're offering some type of what I would call hard money or option money, where they're saying, we're really serious, we want to buy your home, here's $5,000 or whatever that amount is, that if we for some reason don't close by X date, then you get to keep that money. But if we do close, then it's going to apply towards our down payment or towards our closing costs or whatever. So it's a win-win for everybody, especially, and it shows you that they're really serious, and it kind of compensates you for the time your house is going to be off the market.
Yeah, well said. And a bridge loan is pretty simple. It's where you go out and you're getting a loan. Oftentimes that loan is pledged against the collateral for that loan is the equity in your current primary residence. So you get that loan, it's enough to do, whether it's a down payment, whether it's renovation costs, whatever that may be. It could be a bridge loan to build your new home. The bottom line is that you want to make sure that when you do sell your current primary residence, you're making enough money to where you can comfortably and easily pay off that bridge loan that you took out. So a lot of different options when bridging that gap between selling and buying. Now let's talk about when it doesn't make sense to buy before selling. So talk us through when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I mean, Parker, a lot of these are ones that you deal with as a mortgage lender. I think people get really excited, like, to buy a new home, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes they are so excited that they find this perfect home and they want to buy it tomorrow, which is great and exciting. I agree, it's so exciting and it's perfect, but they still haven't sold their current home. And sometimes this isn't going to make sense. It's just not going to be financially feasible for some people. One, and Parker already talked about these, I guess, like, can you qualify for a second mortgage? A lot of people can't. And also, or if you can qualify for a second mortgage, can you afford 2 mortgage payments? Do you want to afford 2 mortgage payments for a month or 2 months? Or what if your house doesn't sell for 5 more months? Are you going to be able to do that? So that can be difficult. And Parker, do you kind of want to talk about what the process is for getting a second mortgage and why it might be difficult for some people?
Yeah, so there's something called your debt to income ratio. Now, this is a simplification, but most of the time you need your debt to income ratio to be below 50%. So how do you calculate that? Well, first off, we talk about how much your gross monthly income is. All gross means is, it's not that you're not making any money. Gross is before taxes, before anything is taken out. So we figure out how much is your gross monthly income, right? We then are going to take all of your monthly debt liabilities. So That's going to be car loans, student loans, and mortgages. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, here's where this debt to income ratio can get tricky is if you are not under contract or you're not going to be able to sell your current primary residence before buying your new home, then you need to make enough money each month to support the mortgage payment for your current home, the future mortgage payment for your future primary residence, as well as any other debts and liabilities that you may have. Now, there are some people who are able to get qualified to buy a future home, counting both the future home payment and their current home payment. That being said, most people, it's something called a sell contingency, to where I can qualify them and they can get a loan to buy this new home, but they're going to have to have sold their current home first. So it's certainly possible, but it is definitely more difficult because if you think about your monthly bills, most people, their largest monthly bill is their mortgage payment or their rent payment. So that's the reason why you want to make sure that you crunch all these numbers on the front end before you do something aggressive like, go under contract to buy a new home and you haven't even listed your current home.
Right.
All right. Now, when you can feel comfortable buying before selling, we've covered a lot of these, Ashley, but anything else that you want to add to these 3 bullet points when it's, if you've got these in place, you should feel pretty comfortable buying before selling.
I think the key word on this slide is cash. If you've got cash, you can feel comfortable buying before selling and not really worrying about it at all. Now, I mean, in other times you might feel stretched. So that's what we're saying. Can you feel comfortable? Are you going to feel stretched? Or is it maybe not a good idea? And those are the things that, although we are very excited and want to help you find your dream home, your next step in your chapter of your living, right? We don't want to put you in a situation where it's not a good idea. So this is most of the time when we're going to say, don't worry about your plan. You can buy anything you want to before you sell your home. You got the cash.
Yep, that's exactly right. Cash is king. And so here's the big takeaway is buying and selling a house at the same time can be a relatively painless process if you have, you guessed it, an experienced realtor and lender on your side who has helped you create a detailed plan. Hopefully you've been able to take away from our time together that it is absolutely possible to buy before selling your current home. That being said, you're going to have a really strong plan in place, because oftentimes if you have a strong plan that's assuming the worst outcome, and that worst outcome is something that you're comfortable with, then it's probably a good idea to go forward. But if that plan is assuming that all the things that need to happen are going to happen on your timeline, then it's probably going to be a little bit too much risk for you to take on. We got some questions though, Ashley. So let me stop sharing my screen so that I can access these questions. Give me one moment. All right. Here we go. Okay. So first question is, can I sell and buy on the same day? You want to take that one, Ashley, and then I can chime in?
Yeah, I think this is definitely gonna have to be a tag team answer here. My answer is, it depends. Sounds like an attorney, I guess. It depends, but the answer is yes, you can sell and buy on the same day. We know plenty of people who've done this. The issue is it requires almost perfect timing on so many people's timelines. So it's your timeline as far as when your house sells, right? Your buyer's timeline, did they have a house they had to sell so that they have the money and the funds, or even is all their paperwork together at the right time? So your closing on your current home has to occur before your closing on your new home, unless you had that cash.
Unless you got the cash.
Yeah. You do whatever you want to, whenever you want to. So I think mainly it's tough, but it's possible. But we've seen so many closings delayed for a number of reasons. Parker's promise is that closings will occur on time, and they do. But we've even had some just because of various issues where maybe it occurred on the same day, but a couple hours later because there was paper coming back and forth, right, Parker?
Wait,
So
or we had that one situation where we were ready to go, but the seller didn't do their due diligence to essentially
yes,
file some essential papers with the county. And so it was what it was. Like you and I done everything that we could, and it was just out of our control. Um, I think too, Ashley, that if you're going to, so you're exactly right. If you got the cash, then yeah, you can buy and sell them the same day because you've got the cash to buy whether or not you sell. But if you need the cash from your current home to buy your new home, then it is so incredibly important, if at all possible, to make sure you're using the same title company or the same attorney for both transactions. Okay. The second thing is, if at all possible, if you can be using the same lender who's dealing with, so like, and this is rare to happen, but it's happened once to me before, and it was amazing how smoothly it went, is the person buying your current home, if they're using me and then you are using me to buy your new home, then what I'm able to do is I'm able to control the entire process. And especially if we're using the same attorney or title company, then that just eliminates so much risk on buying and selling on the same day. So that's
that's
great,
really
great
good.
question. Here's
Yeah.
another question for us. Is it better to sell your house before buying another? You've kind of addressed this, but anything else you want to add to what we've already addressed about that?
No, I mean, I think is it better? It really depends on your situation, and it depends on if you have a place to go. If you don't sell your house before you buy another, or can you handle two house payments? If you sell your house before buying another, do you have a place to go? But I think for most people, it's the ideal situation because then now they have extra cash, which they can use to fund a down payment and not have to come out of their own coffers.
Yeah, coffers, love that word. All right, and I have nothing to add there. That's exactly right. And then last question we have is, can I have two mortgages? Already addressed this, but I'll say it again. Yes, you can, but you want to make sure that that's been part of your pre-approval process with whatever lender you're using. Um, a lot of times lenders will just assume that your current mortgage payment will go away because you'll be selling your house before you're buying your new one. And so they'll base their pre-approval off of that assumption. And that's not an assumption that needs to be made. Definitely try to see what's the max you can get pre-approved for if you're carrying your current mortgage payment, and then kind of go from there. So, but no, you definitely can carry two mortgages. Just got to make sure the lender signs off on it. All right. Well, thank you all so much for another awesome First Friday Real Estate. Ashley, thank you so much for putting together just a killer presentation. I love doing this with you. And next month, we're going to be back with kind of, I'm excited about this. We're going to really go from something that's universal to something that's very niche, which is kind of Ashley's bread and butter. And it's, all right, what's the process look like when you're trying to buy a unique luxury property or just a unique property in a unique location, like for example, Lake Lanier. So if you're trying to, if you have dreams of retiring and buying a lake home or a home up in the mountains, or if you're someone who wants to maybe buy a vacation home, or if you're someone who's just tired of the shuffle and wants to get off the grid, this is going to be an absolute must attend next month, where Ashley's going to talk about the different ins and outs of buying unique properties in unique locations. Until then, Ashley, thanks so much for your time, and I'll see you the next First Friday in March.
See you, Parker. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.